Hi, it's Risa.
And Amy from Missing Witches here to invite you to join a reparations movement.
Every year, we pay forward our Coven membership dues to the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal and invite you to join us in raising funds for Indigenous-led organizations.
Getting involved is easy. Make a contribution of $10 or more to your local Indigenous-led org, land protectors, water protectors, housing, justice, rematriation. Take a screenshot of your receipt and email it to witchreparations@gmail.com.
For every $10, you get one entry into a draw for fabulous witchy prizes. So $50 is 5 entries, 100 is 10, so on.
Plus, everyone who joins the fundraiser will automatically get a discount code from House Witch in Salem, so you literally can't lose.
The Missing Witches Reparations fundraiser runs through the month of May. Go to missingwitches.com/reparations for all of the juicy details.
Because it's not a gift, it's a debt.
And it's not a donation, it's a reparation.
This tale begins with the joyful tulip that stands proud in a stately garden amongst many people and plants, out together celebrating a wonderful event. Her bloom is cream with deep red streaks, reminiscent of the marble. She stands tall with others of all different varieties under the blossoms of the excitable trees. A deep canopy of pink pastels and creamy whites that on occasion sprinkle their blooms like a delicate snow. The tulip sways her head to the distant music of the fiddle and the drum of the Morris dancers. The friendly dandelion opens its blooms like the roaring sun to the sound of the joyful harmonium, as the people dance around a tree unlike any other, known to us as the Maypole. The flora love this moment in the year where the earth shifts in spirit and people come out to bathe in the sunlight rays. The tulips who come back again and again, altering ever so slightly every spring, as their bulbs age and divide, becoming like their tulip ancestors. Unlike the vibrant dancing people flowers in the distance, with their fabric petals and their berry bells that ring out loud in a timely fashion. They change so rapidly every year, thought the tulip in her own language, which is a mystery to us. A wandering frog hopped up and stopped still at the sight, as the tree, unlike no other, began opening up its long colourful leaves, that the people flowers hold and twirl to create a plait of patterns at the top of the tree trunk of this unlikely tree. It reminds the flora of the unfurling ferns. The colourful scene then halted. A drum banged one last time, and the people flowers fell silent. The trees whispered to the frog and each other, "They are stirring." And the garden turned to look, in its own unrecognisable way, to the most beautiful tree at the top of the clearing. This tree was held in high regard. It was royalty to the earth. This tree was one of unity. It was perfectly balanced, and it was absolutely unique. There were 2 striped trunks of pink and white blossoms, curled around one another in a loving embrace. The branches similar to lovers' arms, wrapped and fold, mixing white and pink blooms together. The trunk had become one, merging as two barks combined to create a strong bond to withhold any storm. And on this day, this royal tree was celebrated. Time stood still. The audience took a breath as the spirits of this royal tree emerged. Not as humans, or anything that we could recognise or even imagine, but as nature's presence, as pure balance, as dark and light. The tree's spirits stood together and joined in what the tulip thought was petals and what humans would think of as hands, and moved towards the May tree and its celebrations to thank all those who gathered for this joyous display. Everyone that was present was silent, apart from the birds in the canopies, who sung their happy songs in delight as they watched the unfolding ceremony. The tree spirits, known as the May Queen and her King, took their seats under an old tree whose blossoms were of a deep, rich pink. And as they sat, the old tree shook his branches so effortlessly, as he did every year, and the flowers fell like confetti upon the royal couple, the tree spirits, the goddess and her god, who were very much in love, whose union for the land and her blooms are celebrated in this joyful tradition every year. And the tulip felt honoured to have been present in this ritual of celebration and love, balanced dark and light, and rejoiced. And with that, the celebrations resumed. Now then, witches and beautiful souls, welcome back to a solitary witch episode on the Bell Witch podcast. A delightful, wholesome show that encourages you to get witching in the 21st century. This episode is about my favourite Sabat, which is, of course, the beautiful, super duper, flamboyant and vibrant Beltane, which I think was possibly the first communal ritual event I went to as a newly fledged witch. And it was amazing and full of all the stuff I really love as somebody who's quite eccentric and loves to dress up. I can remember the first time I ever really experienced Morris dancers in a pub in Scarborough, possibly about 20 years ago now, way before children, on a little gallivant flit to the coast. We were sat in the pub called The Sun, and it was really quiet on a Saturday night. And then this army of Morris dancers flew in through the door with big sticks, randomly dancing in the middle of the pub, banging the sticks together, which made this soundtrack that they were dancing to. I can't even remember if they had any instruments. I think it was just the rhythmic banging of the sticks and the amazing patterns that they made. I think at one point the sticks created a pentacle. And as a young gothic, I was very impressed by this little detail, so much that I've locked it away, especially to talk about on this episode. It's quite ironic that I was also in a pub called The Sun, the sun being a card associated with Beltane festivals. You see all these teeny tiny little details. Warm welcome to my new Patreon subscribers, Kelly, Cheryl, Cherry Ward, Stephanie, Catherine Bella and Emma Carlan, I think it is. Sorry if I've mispronounced that. So great you're here. Thank you so much for supporting me on this little merry endeavour. And one last request before I press play on the main body of this episode topic. Please, please, if you've not already, vote the Bell Witch podcast for the Cheerful Earful Awards Golden Lobes listener. Closing is very soon. It might even be Sunday after this episode comes out on the Friday. So the last few days, the link is in the show notes on my link tree right at the top. If you could vote for the Bell Witch podcast, and then I may even get a shiny trophy that I can put in my witchy room and stare at longingly, so thankful that I'm getting a little bit of recognition for all this work I'm ploughing into the Bell Witch. It would be right good. Right, without further ado, enjoy the rest of this Beltane episode. The word Sabat is actually related to a French word, which is sabateur, meaning to revel and frolic. And I don't think any other Sabbat captures this more than the beautiful and abundant Sabbat of Beltane. It is one of the most fruitful, one of the most energetic celebrations of the year. It is indeed a fire festival, and it has deep historic roots from fire associations with cattle. As time progresses, from my research it appears the Sabbat transforms and merges with May Day celebrations and union celebrations and things about coming together and celebrating all things love and sex. So yeah. Ooh la la. As the human need evolves, our Sabbats evolve with us. And Beltane is absolutely no exception on that, because it has a wild spirit about it where people just can't help but get involved, because we're all in need of the sunshine and the colours and the joyfulness and the vibrancy. Having gone through the bleak winter, especially in Blighty, it's a Sabbat, I think, that most people get involved with, whether you're a witch or a pagan or not. Its roots can be traced right back to an ancient Roman festival known as Floralia, as well as the early pre-Christian festival of Beltane and other European May Day celebrations. One of these well-known celebrations is called Walpurgis Night, where Christians feast in celebration of a saint, Walpurga, I think that's how you pronounce it, an 8th century abbess, and is celebrated on the night of the 30th of April and the day of the 1st of May. There indeed was bonfires involved. The saint was hailed by the Christians of Germany for battling pests, rabies and whooping cough, as well as against witchcraft. Boo! Okay, let's get back to Beltane. It mirrors Samhain in terms of placement in the year, and both Sabbats are considered sacred and when the veil is at the thinnest, whereas Samhain celebrates the death and ancestors of our past and the darkness, being a hermit and recoiling and hibernating. Beltane celebrates spirits of life and fairies and the trees and the earth and things waking up and vibrancy and living your best life. All things exciting for the coming season of summer. The morning frost has now been replaced by the beautiful morning dew. And the long days, which are still getting longer, enable us to be present and thankful for the day, allowing us to live more outside and enjoy our surroundings and not tucked up in our home, keeping warm. I love it all. It's just so opportunistic. People start taking up hobbies and wanting to experience new things because there is a fresh new zest, a vibration, a little twinkling in people's eye about like waking up, trying something different and being open to opportunities. It really does capture the beings of this planet and their imagination and their joyous natures wanting to take a leap into something new, fresh, vibrant and exciting. Beltane may have originally been connected to the worship of the Celtic god Belanus. Belanus was a widely recognised deity associated with healing, sunshine and worship, all the way back to prehistoric times. It is such an optimistic time of the year where in history farmers and agricultural working people would have felt the change in the seasons and ramped up their planting and spreading of plant life, sowing seeds for the imminent summertime, and the sun, which was thought to be represented by those burning big bonfires that everybody used to light and dance around, interact with and worship. The Beltane fires were sacred and were lit on 2 separate hills. Cattle would be passed through them, not in celebration of livelihood, but in a devotion of looking after them and keeping them well and safe, as fire is associated with purity and cleansing, and it was seen as an act of devotion and also a request to the higher gods or the spirits of the land to protect the livestock from upcoming troubles such as diseases, bad luck and death in labour and loss of life. Even the ash from these said fires were considered sacred and would be spread around the fields of the farms as offerings for a successful harvest of the year coming, and sometimes they'd be smeared on the cattle in an attempt to signal to the goddesses and the gods and the spirit of the earth that these cattle had indeed been passed through the burning fires on the hills and are now protected. And sometimes people would smear them on the doors in hope that the family behind those doors would be protected and well, just like the cattle, of which was now protected by those fires. It has also been said that to carry the energies of Beltane from the fire throughout the year, people would put out the fire in their hearth, which was from Yule, and restart it with the Beltane fire from across the farm. In the Isle of Man, the people invited the smoke of the Beltane bonfires to blow over themselves and their cattle, believing that this would ensure mutual vitality for the year coming. It smells right nice though, doesn't it? You know, when you've sat next to a bonfire and all your clothes smell of burning fires. Oh, bloody love that, I do. Once the fire did die down, the ashes were sprinkled all over the crops to increase the earth's fertility. Other theories believe the fires were used instead in a sympathetic sense, the destructive properties of the fire utilised to destroy any baneful influences that may have been flying around at that moment, natural and supernatural. So covering all the bases. The optimism of the local village would spread far and wide, and many would visit holy wells during the festival to gain the first waters from dawn from a well on Beltane morning, and that was thought to be very potent magic. It is said that people would walk clockwise around the well to mimic the direction of the sun moving from east to west, offer coins and other small tokens to the sacred well's residing spirit in hopes of receiving their wishes and gaining the blessings. I wonder if that's why we throw coins into water now, because it's an historic Beltane ritual. How cool. Even though Beltane resides in the light half of the year, ruled by the presence of the Oak King who won the battle back in Yule, some witchy books or Wiccan books suggest that it is ruled by the goddess aspect, as it is the light side of the year, which is about deep reflection, stillness and creativity. Some witches believe that Beltane is mostly a masculine in energy festival, as we're celebrating the Beltane sun, and the sun is of the masculine energies. So I can see both sides to this, but I'm pretty firm on the idea that this is a festival of balance, and therefore both really are as important as each other, as is the greenwood marriage of the goddess and the god. And also, it's not a sex thing in terms of man versus woman. This is so much bigger than a gender thing. It really is about the raw essence and the spirit of the balanced divine, of the masculine and the feminine energy, the day and the night, the movement and the reflection, the sun and the moon, yin and yang energies and all that jazz. It's just so complementary. I think of it as like the energies of the goddess and the god, the feminine and the masculine. They do not have gender, they are just an essence. Anybody can practice, and I think sometimes, especially with tarot cards and stuff, that gets lost because, in all honesty, us mortals struggle to really understand the energies of the divine, feminine and masculine without the very human nature of assigning gender roles to help us understand. We just can't do it because we're not of higher realms. So we do as best. And I hope that has helped you understand a little bit more. I mean, it's taken me 10 years to understand this and I'm only just there. So it is paramount that we observe the unity and the balance of this festival. And this is beautifully portrayed by the May Queen and her king. In pre-Christian European religions, the spirit of vegetation and woods is often the king and queen of the woodlands, and the association of the May King and the May Queen, the goddess and her god, is a long-standing association throughout history at Beltane. The May Queen presides over the festivals along with her consort, and at this time of year they are seen as together and united and married, as in the Wiccan Wheel of the Year, where the goddess finally finds her god. Maiden meandering through the woods discovers the young strapping lad looking to spread his seed. Oh, you Wiccans, you're so rude. I love it. She then transforms into the mother aspect of the triple goddess by getting pregnant to the sun. And then they have a right big ass wedding. I mean, everybody loves a wedding. Drinks all round. It cannot be denied, it is very erotic. I do feel this came later after the burning of the fires and the cattle that passed through them, but there is an energy of coming alive, and I think that has gathered speed over all the years, which has transformed into what we've got now. A joyful, optimistic, loving, balanced energy where people want to start new things and connect with the land and the plants, the flora and the communities around them. And what interesting traditions can be used to bring the community together all that time ago. The maypole. How phallic is that? On the last weekend of April, I was lucky enough to go to a local event and took part in maypole dancing. It was so much fun. Absolutely loved it. There's something about being a team, you know, because you've got to follow patterns to make the ribbons make a beautiful pattern at the top of the pole. So it's all about a balance of people, a balance of numbers, following a pattern, working together, which is reminiscent of the bees, which I mention later on. It looks so beautiful, and yet it could be a giant knob. I mean, people say it is. I'm not so sure, but maybe it is. It's like a knob of the earth. I think it's more about trees and old-fashioned adorning, but that's just me. I'm obsessed with trees. So. Maypoles have their roots in early Germanic paganism and are practiced throughout parts of Europe during the Iron Age and the medieval periods. The symbolism has been linked to the world tree, which is the ash tree, but most commonly the maypole and its phallic shape is considered the symbol of fertility. The maypole traditions have evolved from older practices of simply decorating living trees at Beltane. And at the time that the maypoles really got popular, Men would herd into the woods to seek the tallest tree for the maypole, well ahead of the actual celebrations, and sometimes it was the Yule tree that was saved and recycled into next year's maypole. They were erected in the centres of villages and towns, decorated with garlands and wreaths of flowers, fallen leaves, and later colourful ribbons in order to braid them into beautiful patterns. Maidens were then invited to dance around the maypoles in hopes of bringing fertility and good fortune to the community and their crops. These maidens will have been accompanied by the local townsman, who would have been the traditional Morris dancers of the time, with bells on their ankles, knees, arms and wrists, moving to the beat of a drum and a traditional Irish fiddle, as well as a harmonium in later times, to dance merriment and celebrate the land waking up and the customs of preparing to plant for the later harvest in autumn. I also had a go at this Morris dancing. I've seen it on and off throughout my life and I've always really enjoyed it. It's just so animated and entertaining and very merry. This was at the Blossom Festival in Bradford Bollins Hall. There were two groups there. One of them was called the Rainbow Morris Dancers, who reside in Otley apparently. No, I think they're from Shipley and the other ones are from Otley. And both these team of Morris dancers have been going since like the early 90s. Turns out there's tons of Morris dancer groups around where I live. I had no idea there were so many, and they're actively looking for people to join and carry on the tradition. So if you are that way inclined, I do influence you to get in contact and see what it's all about. It was brilliant. It was like being a kid again. Oh my God, I want to be a Morris dancer. That pesky Beltane energy where you want to start new stuff. I think this is mine. Like, I had such good fun. It was just so joyful, and it didn't half get you fit, I reckon, because I was so out of breath. Also, the garb is fabulous. Can you imagine me dressed up as a Morris dancer with a fetching hat full of hawthorn and bells and a lovely rainbow on my back? Yes, please, it's going to happen. Important reminder, a merrying should not be confused with a maying. Back then, while all this was going on, people would go a maying, which isn't what you think it is. Young couples would elope to the woods to go a maying, aka have some sex, as a tradition that went hand in hand with Beltane, and it wasn't seen as seedy or a little bit dodgy, as it was about, remember, unity, consent, balance, and being equal and complementary in a relationship. In fact, it was actively encouraged to get the young uns to go off into the forest, because the act of eloping was considered an offering to the woodland spirits of the time to bring good fortune for the crops being sown. And this is why Beltane is a fantastic time nowadays to get handfasted or married, as a bit of a nod to the history of this. There was a ritual at some point with the goddess and the god where the god would pursue her like the deer, kind of chase after her and kind of force himself on her to have sex with him, which luckily I think is very old-fashioned and not like that anymore, and let's be fair, it is quite rapey and not at all what we want in a beautiful union festival. I love the idea that people could speak freely and be themselves, you know, not under the male gaze or considered problematic for going off and do what nature intended us to do as a living species of the land. So romantic. Until, that is, the Puritans got wind of it and apparently outlawed belting altogether because of all the sex. They just couldn't handle it. Boo-hoo! Let people have nice things. But fear not, because the spirit of Beltane persisted through the traditional merriment of May Day and celebrating the 1st of May and the coming of summer, which the church, I think, could accept a little bit more easier than eloping to the woods, frolicking in daylight and doing things they shouldn't be doing out of marital wedlock. And I think today that is why they've both kind of merged together, Well, for me as a pagan anyway, I consider May Day and Beltane one of the same, but I think I get a gist of the two things running side by side, coming from different angles and becoming one huge, joyous and well-attended festival. Even talking about it just gets me really animated and joyous. One thing that's really stood out to me this year is flowers and blossom trees. They have been so abundant and apparent in my spiritual living. I've really noticed them this year and just how many there is. The story you heard at the beginning was largely inspired, again, by me meditating and receiving information through the things that I've experienced recently. There is actually a tree near my house that is two trees, a pink blossom and a white blossom that have fused together in this beautiful big folding of legs and arms and bodies. The blossoms are like half pink, half white, and it's such an inspirational tree. I can't believe I've only just noticed it, and I've lived in this neighbourhood for going on 14 years now. Don't you think that's just wild? This tree and lots of trees and the tulip picking have featured heavily on my Instagram recently. So if you do follow the Bell Witch podcast, separated by _, you'll recognise this tree and these flowers from the constant updates I've been doing the past 2 weeks. It is a challenge to not be inspired by nature of this time, but different flowers and trees come up for me every year. One year the forget-me-nots massively inspired my witchcraft, of which I did quite a cool episode about. I'll link that in the show notes below. But this year, it's been all about the tulips. Flowers are beautiful and they represent the abundance that the season brings. The beautiful blooms of colour grace the land on this turning of the wheel, and they are often used in the flower crowns that the maiden and the mother goddesses wear, garlands that decorate the maypole, wreaths that we hang on our door. The circular shapes symbolise the cycle of the life and the rebirth of the sun. Ancient pagans often wore garlands on their heads to celebrate and toss them into the streams or ponds as an offering to the water spirits of the wells in which they visited. And the flowers are just so abundant and so different, and there's so many colours, but also they can't exist without the bees spreading their pollen to regenerate and begin again. And I think that also pays homage to Beltane and how they need each other to exist, the whole balance goddess god energies. The bees tend the flowers and the flowers bloom for them. It really is a team effort, a delicate dance of survival, a relationship to growth. When looking at magical properties of the tulips, especially associated to Beltane, to be fair, there wasn't much. I found quite a lot of information about how the tulips are considered quite a sad flower because they only last a couple of weeks and they drop their petals like teardrops. There's an ancient belief that assures us that within every tulip resides a fairy that grants wishes when the flowers open up and bloom to their maximum. During the early Ottoman Empire, gardeners of the time associated specifically the red tulip as one of great pure love and not lustful, hot love like the red rose. And this was echoed in the Victorian edition of The Language of Flowers in later times. My personal association with tulips at this time, I feel like it is one of masculine energy, simply because they do indeed bloom fast and die young. They are big flowers, I feel, with the masculine energy. It's a quick turnaround, it's fire in your belly, it's passion projects, which does tie in with Beltane. I recently learned from a friend that tulips that are crossbred to become different and stripy and two-tone and a bit weird looking are bred by cross-pollinating different ones. And eventually, as they grow and divide, the tulip will revert back to the original bulb, like its original ancestor, which I really like. As a witch, I feel like this could be used in magic about coming home and connecting with your ancestors and trying to find realisation as to who you are, which isn't necessarily Beltane related, but for me personally, that works really well with the tulip as a flower in magical workings. Other flower associations with Beltane are, well, anything that's in bloom at the moment. It's just so easy to look around and connect with the hawthorn and the blackthorn and the rowan just about sprouting now. The elder flowers are waking up. The daffodils have long gone, their flowers brown and crisp, but in their place is the humble and spiritual dandelion, which is such a powerful and a magical, underrated plant. I honestly can't believe it's considered a weed. Well, maybe I can to try and yet again unlink us from the earth and her knowledge and wisdom. The powerful dandelion, such a good ally of witchcraft and paganism, and is totally a plant that I need to do a whole episode on because, again, there's just so much information on it. Daisies with the little fairies nestled within their delicate petals. Cowslip, foxglove, and all the cherry blossoms throughout the land on the trees. Currently abundant upon every street corner and city park. And the trees associated with Beltane. The oak, because the oak king is currently reigning on this light side of the year. The walnut, the willow, the hawthorn, the pine and the ash. Hot take. I would argue personally that all trees are Beltane trees, just as all trees are Samhain trees, because trees are just so important to live, inspiring and a massive part of our lives as human beings. And I know I'm a tree fanatic, but unlike the flowers which die back or spread seeds and disappear, these trees live with us 24/7, hopefully, if they don't get ill and they don't get cut down. So it seems irrelevant to put trees with certain Sabbats when really we should invite them to all the Sabbats. There's just so much. There's the Green Man, there's the Jack in the Green, John Barleycorn, the Hobby Horse, the ancient tradition of mumming, which I covered actually back in Yuletide, which was the Origins of Santa Claus episode. If you wish to go find it, again, I'll link it. And of course, fairies. You can't really talk about Beltane without mentioning a fairy or two. Beltane folklore frequently speaks of the presence of the fae, as the veil is at its thinnest between us and the other worlds of Celtic tradition. Stories from rural communities often told us of human relationships with the fae on Beltane Eve, in those forests going a-maying, and how if you desired to work with the fae, to do it with the utmost respect and caution. The maybush, aka the hawthorn, in law is the tree that could be the gateway to the hidden world of the fae. A witch wishing to tempt out the fae or work with them could do so via the hawthorn, tending it with respect and considering the grounds beneath it sacred. Witches would advise anyone not to take a cutting of the hawthorn tree for fear of misfortune following them. And as a witch myself, I absolutely agree. I would never ever cut the hawthorn. If I wanted some for a good luck charm or to create a protective talisman, I would have to look for it on the ground because I know farmers cut it quite severely because it goes wild. And, you know, maybe they can do that because they are tenders of the land and keepers of the cattle, and they may have earned some kind of unspoken relationship or understanding with the fae, even if they don't know it. That makes sense to me as a witch. To work with the fae at this time of year would be mostly successful if offerings of bread and milk and beautiful pebbles to hold or freshly cut flowers are left by the practitioner wishing to work with the fae at the sacred maybush to entice the fae through the gate. A word of caution though from me as a podcaster, the things I read and hear from fellow witches, pagans and magical practitioners indicate that to work with the fae is relatively easy to begin with, but then you've always got to be very aware of them. Like, you can't just invite them and then tell them to go back when you finish with them. And you must always talk about them with the utmost respect. If they hear they're being slandered at any point throughout the year, whether you're working with them or not, they absolutely will come into your life. So I just feel like I need to say that out loud, because that's my understanding of working with the fae, which, just for clarity, I've never actually done. The bees of Beltane are also connected to the fae, as in Britain and Ireland, the folklore connects bees as nature spirits. One Irish tale from the mid-17th century tells us that the bees were thought to be the fairies carrying souls of dead loved ones over the vibrant blossom fields of the beautiful late spring. Another folklore tale is that of young fairies misbehaving and having a punishment in way of becoming a worker bee by their community. Yes, if you are near a blossom tree, you will often hear the delicate, sweet buzzing of a busy bee worker within the blooms nearby. Nature sugar fays, or bees, work hard pollinating the crops and producing nectar for the goddess and god of Beltane. And you may be moved to come close and whisper your worries to the bee, as the old proverb goes, important news of weddings, deaths and births, make sure to tell it to the bees. Other animals you may wish to work with during Beltane: the cow, the dove, the frog, the rabbit and the stag. The stag relating to the masculine essence of Beltane, which is the horned god, the Celtic god Cernunnos, who is king of the forest, protector of the animals and the season, a hunter, a lover, and soon to be a father. There is a lot for the goddess, including Artemis, Danu, Diana, Flora, Freya, and one that really jumped out to me personally is Bona Dea, also known lovingly as the good goddess. Bona Dea really does sound blooming amazing and is connected to this time of year when Beltane falls, as she has her own festival that happens early May, usually on the 4th. She is the goddess and leader of women and mothers. She fiercely protects women against domestic violence and assists throughout labour and giving birth. A protective midwife goddess. It was said that she had a secret festival and only women were able to attend. It was so secret that this goddess didn't even have a name that could be openly spoken. There is research to suggest that Bona Dea isn't actually even her name. Yes, she is a mystery, concealed from the public gaze and, according to most later Roman literacy sources, entirely forbidden to men. So for me, that more unusual goddess, which is supposedly connected to Beltane, doesn't quite work, as this is about union and relationship and supporting each other. But I just wanted to mention her really because I am just so drawn to her, and I feel like a goddess like this is massively needed right now in the world with what's going on with all the crime and hatred and misogyny against women and trans women and non-binary folks. I reckon she would be the goddess to ask for help and call in on political magic such as this. She would make for a fantastic episode, a deep dive on her. However, if there's not much information around because she was so secretive, I might have to channel it or something. Tarot cards associated with Beltane is anything really that comes in a pair, such as the sun and the moon, the empress and her emperor. Any court card couples, I would probably suggest wands as its fire energy and pentacles as its earth energy, both kings and queens of them two suits. Oh yes, and the lovers, because there's a couple on there. And if you're using playing cards, I would say, again, the royalty, but also two of hearts, definitely. So the last bit, what can you do to celebrate Beltane? Have a fire. There's got to be some fire. A teeny tiny fireball. Light a red candle. Have a talk to the flame. Toast the lady and her man, the goddess and the god, the king and queen of May. Toast them over the fire with a glass of wine or a glass of juice or a bit of mead, as you would a wedding. Find a community in which you are welcome and comfortable and content with. Are you confident enough to visit a May Day organised by the local council, or can you get a few friends together to organise a little fire in the yard, toast some marshmallows, talk about your passions in life, hopes for the future, hobbies you want to take up? Bake bread and bring it as an offering to the gathering. Do a spot of maypoling, do a spot of dancing, moving the energies round with the Morris dancers of the land. Feel free to Miranda and dilly-dally. Don't rush anywhere, just enjoy the presence. Maybe visit a sacred well or some running water. One of my favourite things to do on Beltane morning is to get up early, go outside, witness the sunrise, welcome him in, and wipe my face on the grass or collect the morning dew and wash your face in it. I've done that pretty much since I started being all witchy. It's quite a beautiful self-loving ritual to do and doesn't take much time. Some people take out cloths or muslins and try and collect the dew and put it in a bottle and put it on your altar as a Beltane altarpiece. But to be fair, I think it's so valuable and fleeting as the sun comes up, the dew evaporates. There's a beauty of being in the present moment and you'll feel fresh as a daisy. Speaking of daisies, make yourself a floral crown with daisy chains or the most fabulous dandelions you can find, and go prancing around the trees wearing your crown. Be silly and channel the maiden before she becomes the mother. If you've got children, invite them to prance about on your road wearing crowns and picking daisies. If you've got animals, walk them while talking to the trees. Could you put a daisy collar on your dog? Notice the flowers, talk to the bees. Doesn't have to be a big all singing, all dancing ritual, but remember there's a playful energy with the goddess and the god aspect in the Beltane Sabat of love, optimism and celebration of the most vibrant future before you, to marvel and celebrate the present and look forward to the future and the gifts that are to come. That's it from me, Swailes, the friendly green witch of the Bell Witch podcast. I hope you have an absolutely beautiful Beltane celebration, and let me know what you think of this episode by leaving ratings and reviews wherever you hear your podcasts. You can always leave me a comment on the episode on Spotify and I will absolutely reply to you. It's been a pleasure to create this vibrant episode. Thank you so much for listening and stay magical, witches.